What does matter, though, is the one thing that we saw this past weekend, which was the passing of the trade or the franchise tag deadline, excuse me, in the NFL. So a number of players tagged this week, a bunch of running backs, Tony Pollard, Josh Jacobs, Evan Ingram for the Jaguars. No, he's a tight end. But
Had
the
a career
one,
year.
oh yeah, career. But then the one that was big was Lamar Jackson. So what happened after that was what we call a chain reaction, where it seems now that multiple teams that may have been interested in landing the former MVP have seemingly and reportedly pulled out of their interest. There was a number of teams, I believe it was like the Falcons, the Jets were in there as well. We'll get to the Jets in a second. What were some of the other teams in there? Some other
The
ones that were in the
Dolphins,
mix.
the
Dolphins,
Patriots,
Patriots.
Panthers, pretty much any NFL team that does not have a good quarterback, Mitch.
Okay. So it basically is now at this point, the Cleveland Browns have broken the rest of the league when it comes to signing quarterbacks because Lamar Jackson is very, very good. No doubt about that. You could even say he's better than Deshaun Watson at this point. I don't blame that. He's coming off of 2 years not playing in the NFL. I still think there might be something going
MVP.
on between the ears, even though Lamar Jackson got hurt this year. But is he $270 million guaranteed? Handed to him, good. That's where teams are stuck. And that's where the Ravens have been stuck since the middle of last season.
Mitch, we would know firsthand.
Hmm.
We have struggled our entire lives because we don't have a franchise quarterback.
Yes.
We thought we had one. We thought we did. I still will to this day fight that after the 2020 season, we thought we had our franchise quarterback. Obviously, the Browns front office did not think so. But what did the Browns do, Mitch, when they realized Baker Mayfield wasn't a franchise quarterback? They went and met with a quarterback that had not played in a year and a half and got told no, right? All reports say Deshaun Watson said, I'm not going to the Browns. So then what did the Browns do? The Browns gave him a fully guaranteed contract that had never been done in the history of the NFL. Now, the Browns got backlash for it because of other things besides the quarterback play. Let's be honest here, right? This is a guy with a lot of issues. So be it. But what that did, Mitch, is it allowed other quarterbacks league-wide to go, oh, Deshaun Watson hasn't played in 2 seasons. He's getting that. And Lamar Jackson specifically, I was a second-round pick. I've won an MVP. The offense is literally tailored around me. I'm going to get a contract just like that, if not more. And the Ravens all of a sudden said no. Mitch, it is like all these teams, some of the teams we mentioned, had that setting on Twitter where you hit a button and a tweet is ready to go out whenever at a certain time. And as soon as the tag was put on Lamar, it's like the teams hit that. When is the last time you have ever seen an NFL team tweet or retweet they are not interested in a player?
Dude, when I saw that the Falcons Twitter account did that,
folks, we're not like, this isn't a lie. Go to the Atlanta Falcons Twitter page. They literally retweeted they are not interested in Lamar Jackson. Oh, really? Mitch, are you taking Desmond Ridder over Lamar Jackson? I'm not. If you're the Panthers, you taking Sam Darnold or Matt Corral over Lamar Jackson? Let me think about that. A guy who saw ghosts and admitted it. No, probably not. If you are, I don't know, let's talk about the Patriots, who right now are caught in the middle, and Bill Belichick wants to get a 7th. There is what I am saying, collusion, because what the Browns did had never been done before. And now there are 31 other owners who are very upset about it and have probably all, in some way, shape, or form, I believe, have said, hey, let's stick together here. We're not going to give another quarterback this type of money. We're going to make this a one-time thing. And Mitch, whether you want to think there's collusion or not, it is certainly very sketchy now that other teams have done things we've never seen happen before in putting out tweets that they're not interested in an MVP candidate.
Look at this. Look at this. Atlanta Falcons. Look at, I can't process it. I can't understand it. I mean, I can understand it in the sense of these teams are panicking right now because they don't want to think about this too. They want to, look, I disagree with what the sentiment of Richard Sherman is saying here, but it is kind of a point where he even said today they would rather employ worse quarterbacks than a former league MVP. And I think the blowback behind Lamar is, even though he hasn't missed 2 full seasons like Watson's has, he's missed a significant amount of time with injuries. You can
And
say, whoa, what if Joe Burrow had torn his ACL this year? Joe Burrow, since that ACL tear, has been to back-to-back AFC title games and a Super Bowl and has looked good. So I
I
think
believe Joe Burrow's missed more time in the 1 year he missed than Lamar did combined games over the past 2 seasons.
I think so, because Lamar missed half the season this year and then a couple of games at the end of last. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's fascinating.
And so
Oh,
my whole thing here is the Browns were told no. Oh, we're going to go back with Baker then. Baker goes, I'm not coming back. You just said out loud
yeah.
in public, you don't want me. Why would I come back to you? So, Mitch, you said a word though there just a few minutes ago. Desperate. The Browns got desperate and they went and did something they had to do. There is going to be another team that gets desperate. Okay. I don't care what agreement the owners are in. These owners are billionaires with egos and they want to win. If you don't believe they have egos, look at Jerry Jones in Dallas. He can't get out of his own way, right?
Yeah.
Somebody is going to get desperate and go after Lamar and probably have to stab the owners in the back. And guess what? Who cares? Who cares? This is your team. I get that you're in the billionaire club with 32 other billionaires, and that's fine. Do you want your team to continue to suck? To Richard Sherman's point, are you willing to employ worse quarterbacks and have your team suffer when there is a MVP candidate out there that is literally one of the top quarterbacks in the league when healthy? And last year we can have the debate another time whether he was actually hurt or whether he was kind of protecting himself, saying, they're not going to pay me. Why am I going to risk this?
They were confused. My friend was confused last night, Mitch, as to why these teams were so willing to vest their money with Deshaun Watson last year in comparison to someone like Lamar. And I tried to tell them, well, look, there weren't as many teams as interested in trying to trade for Lamar Jackson or Deshaun Watson compared to Lamar Jackson last year. I believe it was only 4 teams, including the Browns. Nobody was willing to give Deshaun that much guaranteed money except for Cleveland, which set a precedent for the rest of the NFL. And say what you want about what was going on off the field with Deshaun Watson, there was a considerable interest in what he could do for a team, despite not having played for the last 2 seasons. What I'm basically trying to get at here is I'm trying to get a better understanding as to what the difference was between Deshaun and Lamar and why it's such a weird hassle that these teams are all going through now to basically be like, hey, now we don't want anything to do with these guaranteed contracts. So we're just washing our hands of this.
I think it just goes back to my whole point of desperate, because Deshaun said no to the Browns. Nobody else offered Deshaun a fully guaranteed contract. And the Browns, once they were reportedly ruled out of the running, went back and said, look, we'll give you the contract. We'll give you fully guaranteed money. Be the first player in NFL history to do it. First quarterback, highest paid quarterback, whatever you want. And because the Browns did that, and because Deshaun Watson did that, other quarterbacks now are going to raise their eyebrow and say, I want that. And Lamar Jackson, to me, Mitch, has a reason to say I want that, because he did not come with any off the field baggage. He's an MVP winner. And he has proven a lot of people wrong that he can be a passer in the NFL, although he probably has had one of the 5 worst wide receiver rooms his entire career in Baltimore. Let's be frank there. I'm saying wide receivers, not tight end. Mark Andrews is a phenomenal tight end. But now that a player did that, other players want that. And I think that's why these teams aren't going after Lamar Jackson. I think that's why there's this hesitation now when, what people are believing is collusion and owners saying we're not doing that. And realistically, Mitch, if this gets ugly, which there's a possibility it does, Lamar could find out a way to say, hey, there is collusion here. I can take him to court. Where he really gets hurt here, Mitch, is he does not have an agent. He represents himself. And you wonder if that's different if he has an agent, but I respect him for doing what he thinks is best for him in terms of representing himself and also holding out for money. Mitch, if he took the NFL to court, the Browns aren't going to be in trouble. When's the last time that the NFL would be in trouble and the Browns wouldn't be in the middle of that trouble? Because the Browns have no reason to trade for Lamar Jackson, right? We have our quarterback. We just saw, why would we go after Lamar? If Lamar says these 31 other teams aren't, these owners are in cahoots with each other because of what the Browns did, Browns are kind of absolved from all this. which is kind of weird to think about. But back to your main point, I just think it literally is the fact that owners don't want to have to do guaranteed money, especially for a player like Lamar who runs. He's not a pure pocket passer. Yes, Deshaun can run. We know he's athletic, but running isn't his main style of playing. And Lamar has progressed as a passer in the NFL. You don't win MVP unless you can still pass the ball. But he's also prone to taking more hits. He has had injuries 2 times now in the past 2 seasons. Owners don't want to shell out that kind of money, and Lamar thinks he's worth that kind of money. And I think that's where the difference is. If Deshaun Watson would have went to Atlanta last year and signed for $230 million, but $180 million guaranteed, maybe Lamar's looking for $200 million guaranteed, and maybe the Ravens are offering to give him that. But teams don't want to get put into this situation with this type of all this money tied up in one position. And we know, we're Browns fans, we see now that the Browns are going to have to restructure Watson's contract and do all this. And there'll be cap casualty cuts that we have of players that are average, right? They have to, because they're going to have to save money for the cap. But I just don't think they want to do this. But I still think, Mitch, that there's a very good possibility Lamar Jackson gets from a desperate team. And also, you mean to tell me you don't think the Cincinnati Bengals in a year are going to give Joe Burrow what he wants?
They are. Well, this is where it's going to get interesting because Joe Burrow might be the apex of the situation involving guaranteed contracts in the NFL, because eventually the owners are going to, and I think they're doing it right now to a point, the owners are especially going to decide, if it isn't resolved by the Lamar situation, they're officially going to decide by then, when is enough enough? When are we going to stop with all of the, okay, let's just give everybody guaranteed money. Let's just give everybody what they want. Let's just give everybody their top dollar. I mean, we just saw Daniel Jones. He didn't get the $45 million he reportedly wanted to, but he's still getting around 40 to 41 million, which is just a few $1,000,000 off of what Deshaun Watson is getting per season with the Browns, which is insane if you think about it.
He's making $6 million less than Deshaun Watson in base salary every single year.
It's crazy.
6 million less. And Mitch, I had this argument with somebody the other day. We were sitting here after the 2020 season. Baker's rookie year was magical and fun, right? Because the Browns had not won a game in so long. And then all of a sudden, Baker comes out and slings it in that Thursday night game against the Jets. And then 2020 happens. And it was like, okay, well, wait. Or 2019 happened, whatever. 2020 happens. And it's like, okay, look, we have our franchise guy. And the Browns said no. Baker is up and down as he was. He was up and he was down, and then he was way up and then down again. And you can point to injuries. But if I told you had to pick, before last season, you had to pick one quarterback to take for your team, Baker Mayfield or Daniel Jones, you're taking Baker. And then people go, well, Daniel Jones has had 3 coaches. Yeah, Baker had 4. Like, people don't understand. Daniel Jones had 1 good year. And I think a lot of that is the credit of Brian Daboll. But to give Daniel Jones, who's had 1 good year out of 4 as a top 10 draft pick, $40 million a year, to me is incredible. It only helps, in my opinion, bolster Lamar's case for why he should be getting paid more, whether it's fully guaranteed or not. But I mean, Mitch, $40 million for Daniel Jones a year? That's crazy.
It is. It is. And I'm looking over some of the details in regards to this whole situation with Lamar. The biggest things for him, the biggest detriments to his contract discussions are a couple things. Number one, it's the amount of money like desired. No team's going to want a contract like that, even if it wasn't fully guaranteed. Some teams might be willing to take a risk on that, but no team especially is going to want it to be fully guaranteed. Number 2 is the injuries. You miss the ends of the last 2 seasons. This one really significant this past year. And it gets to a point where you may have wondered if he was able to come back. You don't want to risk a guy. You don't have a guy risk his future health by putting him out there in a very tough environment like a cold playoff game to further the injury. But at the same time, when you're tweeting out your own injury report and the team doesn't even know about it, that's not a great look for either side. And then the third thing is that he's an MVP, no doubt. That season was 3 years ago at this point. I'm not, and it isn't a case of, oh, he's not the same quarterback. He can be the same quarterback, but those results haven't been produced since those 3 years. And I brought you back to Joe Burrow. everyone's like, oh, Joe Burrow had an ACL tear and it was no problem. That was in his rookie season when nobody was sure if he was going to be a good quarterback in the NFL. When Cincinnati had one of the worst offensive lines of this generation, comes back the next year, and with a team that on paper wasn't as good as some of the juggernauts in the AFC, took them to the Super Bowl and could have won it on that final drive if LA's defense didn't stand strong. The next year, same thing. Get back to the AFC Championship, beat some of the teams you need to beat, win in Buffalo, which is hard to do in January. And if it wasn't for a couple of key mistakes and decisions, you could have gotten past Kansas City again. You could have taken on a Philadelphia team in the Super Bowl that I would argue was probably on par with the Rams team of last season if the Eagles were not just a hair better. So those are the ones for me. And we've been kind of saying that all off season, but we really have to take these issues into account because I don't think it's just a case of, oh, Lamar is getting absolutely screwed over here. No, he's not. No, he's not. He could easily have taken a lesser contract with Baltimore. He didn't have to sign the franchise tag. He could have tried to find a deal with another team, try to broker out a trade. It's not that I don't want Lamar Jackson to get paid. I want him to get paid. He deserves to get paid. He's proven himself to be a quality NFL quarterback. But at the same time, we're acting as if this whole thing it's going to become about the owners and the potential collusion that's been going on here. Not saying it's happening, but I find it fascinating to see where the player and the team, the Ravens, have ended up at this stretch of their tenure together.
And the last thing I'll say on this whole thing, Lamar did sign the tag. The tag allows him to negotiate with any team for as long as he wants, up until week 10. He does not have to play for the Ravens until week 10. If he sits out week 10, then he forfeits all the money. It's like a year never happened. Lamar, Mitch, realistically, now I don't know if he would, but hypothetically speaking, could say, all right, you know what? That's fine. That's fine. I'm not going to play. I'm going to sit back for the first 4 weeks while you go trot out Pro Bowl quarterback Tyler Huntley. Let's see how you guys do. And he could do that. He could also wait through training camp to see if a team gets hurt. And then once again, who's going to be desperate? Who's going to come knocking and calling Lamar Jackson saying, all right, what do you want? Like, let's talk through this. There is a realistic possibility Lamar does not play a football game for the Ravens until midseason. And at that point, then he gets the money he signed for. If the Ravens suck and he comes back, all of a sudden the Ravens flip a switch, then to your point, all of a sudden it goes, oh, he hasn't regained that MVP form in 2 years, but now the Ravens all of a sudden are making a late push for a playoff spot, or the Ravens are a legit factor now in the AFC North. Like, maybe Lamar is worth that money. Lamar did sign the tag, to your point, but it's not, all right, he signed it. He has, this small window to find a team. He can play this out as long as he wants. He really can. And if he wants paid, he'll have to suit up for that week 10 game for Baltimore, wherever it is, or, if it's a bye, I think it's week 11. But after that, we're going to know very quickly where he's going to go and how long. And I hate it, but I love it because the Browns have done something for once that may potentially really affect the NFL and hopefully get Lamar Jackson out of our division. Because that's my big thing, Mitch. As a Browns fan, I hope a team comes knocking and says, we'll give you what you want, and they're in the NFC. Because if the Browns did this and have changed the landscape forever and get an MVP candidate out of our division, I'll love it. I'll love it.
I'm happy you brought up the Browns because this is the one thing that we've been kind of pushing the entire offseason since offseason and the one before it. And I think we've been doing it from a different perspective than I might have here. We've been kind of touting the idea that the Browns have broken the Baltimore Ravens. They've broken the rest of the league by giving a guaranteed contract to a guy who hadn't played in 2 years. And we're like, oh, isn't it awesome? Isn't this great? There's a different perspective to this. A lot of people see the Cleveland Browns as such a desperate and such a poverty NFL franchise. They decided to give a guy who hasn't played in 2 years a guaranteed contract. Even if he were to retire tomorrow, he still gets all that money. Or that may not be true, but it's to a certain point. If you were to retire well before the contract ends, it still gets the guarantee money at a certain point. There is that reality that the Browns were very desperate to find themselves a quarterback, so they make this move. And a lot of people really don't like it because of the effect that it has done to these other teams, to the effect that it's had on teams to these other players. And where I'm very curious is no matter where Lamar goes, if he stays in Baltimore, goes to another team, no matter where these other quarterbacks sign and for how much money they sign, for us, it's still a matter of if is Deshaun Watson worth the money that you're giving him? Because it's going to take a lot of factors to come together in a positive way for Cleveland's favor that's going to make you say yes at the end to answer that question. And I don't know. Time is going to tell whether or not the Cleveland Browns are going to be looked at as a driving force for a very fascinating era of NFL free agency and front office moves, or if they're going to be more known for one of the most regrettable front office moves we've seen in league history, to the point where Andrew Berry may not be able to ever get another job again in the league, or at least not the one that he has a similar title of that he would have a similar title of that he does right now.